So last week, I posted a video on computer programming and how to get started. And I also promised that I was going to start a series of tutorials on Python programming. So this is the very first episode of that series. So without further ado, let's get started. Alright guys, welcome back. So the very first thing you need in order for you to start programming is a piece of software called an IDE. An IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment, and basically it's just a software that allows you to write your code, edit your code, and debug your code, and also package your code. So there are different kind of IDEs and they all come with different kind of tools. Now, there are two main things that determine what kind of IDE or which IDE you should use. So the first thing is the programming language you want to code in. So you have to be sure that the IDE you are selecting supports the programming language. The second thing you need to consider is the kind of machine you are creating the code for. Now, what do I mean by this? If you're writing a code that is going to run on a robot or an embedded system, you need an IDE that supports writing codes for embedded systems. An IDE like Atmel Studio, QU Vision, Arduino IDE. If you're writing a program that is going to run on an Android device, then you should go for something like Android Studio or Visual Studio. So the language you are programming in and also the machine you're programming for determines the kind of IDE you would use. Now, in this course, I'm going to be using several IDEs, right? But I'm going to start with something called JupyterLab. Now, for us to use JupyterLab, we are going to download something called Anaconda Navigator. Anaconda Navigator is a software that comes with several tools, including some IDEs that are installed into it by default. So the first thing you want to do is to go to Google and simply type download Anaconda Navigator. Now the very first link that pops out is the link you want to click on, and this Anaconda Navigator has version for MacBook, Linux, and Windows. So whatever kind of machine you're using, you're fine. So all you need to do is just click on download, ensure that it is showing the version of operating system you're using or the type of operating system you're using. In this case, I'm using a Windows for this tutorial. I'm just going to click on download. Now, because I've already downloaded this and installed it, I'm not going to do this over again. However, the process is quite straightforward. If you've installed any piece of software on your system before, then this shouldn't give you a problem at all. So click on download, install the software, and then launch the software. Now, when you launch the Anaconda Navigator, you get presented with a screen like this. And in this screen, you can see all the available tools and IDE that the software provides. You can see that you have PyCharm Professional here, you have RStudio here, you have Orange here, you have Spider, you have Jupyter Notebook, you have JupyterLab. Now, all these things will be useful in the future, but for now, I want to place our focus on something called the JupyterLab. So all you need to do is just click on launch. And the one thing you need to note is that JupyterLab and Jupyter Notebook, they are both IDEs that are web-based, meaning they run on your web browser. So the moment you click on launch, then this software is going to start a page on your web browser. So I'm going to click on launch here, and then after some seconds, it goes to my web browser and then launch the interface for JupyterLab. So what you want to do, what I advise that you do first is to come here to the File Explorer, click on desktop, and then create a new folder here by clicking on this button here. So call this folder Python Tutorials, or you can just call it DO Python Tutorial. Then inside that folder, you can open the folder, and inside that folder, you can click on Python 3 here to start a notebook file. So you can decide to save this or rename this. So you can click on save. That would save this file. You can rename this file if you want to, I want to call this episode 1, and that's called 1, and then rename. All right. So what you have in front of you is something called a notebook file, and it is basically where you can type and run your code. Now, I'm going to start by typing a simple code here just to show you how this works. Now, we have something we call a cell in JupyterLab. So a cell is currently this rectangle you see where I'm typing my code in now. So this is a single cell. So if I want to run this cell, or when I run this cell, what I'm actually executing is the code written inside that cell. Now you can have multiple lines of code in that cell. But I can just press enter to move to the next line and have another line of code here. So a cell is not restricted to a line of code. Alright, so in order for you to execute these 2 lines of code, all you need to do is to ensure that you have this cell selected by clicking on the cell. If you click on the cell, you're going to have this blue outline on the cell showing that the cell is currently selected. And then all you need to do is to click on play. Then you can see that your code is executed. Now, in order for me to change this code and rerun it, I have to click on it again, ensure that that cell is highlighted. I can change this to hello world 2, change it to hello world 3, and I can click on run here. Now, one thing you will immediately notice is that the moment I clicked on run, a new cell was created. So whenever you run a cell, a new cell will be created. So you can either go back to the previous cell and keep writing your codes, or you can move to the new cell and keep writing your code. So these are called cell. Now another way you can run your cell is let's say you want to probably do an addition here. Let's say 4 plus 7. Instead of pressing the run button here, you can use shift plus enter. Shift plus enter. So you press shift and enter, hold down shift and press enter. That would run the code. So it's the same thing or the same result as pressing the run button here. So that's all we need to know for now. As time goes on, I'm going to show you other tips and tricks on how to use this JupyterLab. But right now, let's focus on actual coding. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear this cell by selecting everything here, and then I can backspace, or I can click on the cell and then click on cut. Click on the cell, click on cut, and we are back to just having one cell. The very first thing that I'll be teaching you in Python is something called a function. And the concept of function applies to every kind of programming language or every programming language. There's function in C++, there's function in Python, there's function in Flutter. Function is like a general concept in computer programming, right? So if you understand what function is in Python, you understand what function is in other languages. Now, a function is basically a task, a very simple task that can be performed by your computer. So for instance, as a human being, you can perform some series of tasks. You can sing, you can dance, you can jump. Those are the functions you can perform by default. So the same thing applies to computer programming. There are several functions that your computer can perform, right, through the programming language that are using to program the computer. So all you need to do is just to call these functions and then give the function the required input to be executed, and the function is executed. Now, earlier I was testing this whole notebook with something called the print function. All right, so the print function is a function that allows you to print something to the screen of your computer, or to display a particular information on the computer, just as the word implies, print, right? So every function has a function name and then followed by parentheses. As you can see here, we have the print, which is the function name, and then we have this open brackets and close brackets, and inside these parentheses here is where you want to put the input of the function. Now, what do I mean by input? Now, for instance, if I tell you to sing, you probably ask me, what song should I sing? Right? So the title of the song that I want you to sing is the input of the function that I want you to perform. It's as simple as that. So if I tell you to go to the market and buy me something, there are two inputs I need to give you. I need to give you money, and I need to tell you what I want you to buy for me. So the function buy requires two inputs: money to buy whatever it is you want to buy, and then what it is that you want to buy. So the same thing applies to the functions in computer programming. Some functions require inputs before they can be executed. So in this case, the inputs that the print function requires is whatever it is that you want to print. And whatever it is that you want to print can be any kind of data. It can be a string, which is basically a character that contains symbols and letters, or it can be just a regular number. So let's try a regular number first. So I want to print, let's say I want to print out 7. All I need to do is to pass that as a function, as an input to the function, and then I can run this code, and then 7 is printed. Simple as that. If I want to print out 8 just beneath the 7, all I need to do is just to create a new print function and then run that cell again, and I get 7 and 8. So the print function allows you to display something on computer screens, as simple as that. So now going back to functions, now before I proceed, now this particular cell contains 2 lines of code. Now in programming, this is also general concept in all programming language. There's something called comment. So sometimes you want to put additional information into your codes, but these additional informations are just meant for you. They're not meant for the computer to execute. So that is called a comment. So if I want to add a comment to this cell, all I need to do, this is the Python thing, is to start my comment with the hash symbol and then put the comments after that symbol. So I can just say this is how you call a Python function. So if I run this code, it has the same results as before, right? It still prints out 7 and 8. This line was totally ignored by the computer because the computer realized that, oh, this is a comment. It is just there for additional information. So this is very, very useful. It allows you to, whenever you use comments in your code, by the time you come back to your code and you get lost, your comments can actually help you find your way. All right, so going back to functions, I'm going to talk about the components that makes up a function. So components that makes up a function. Now, there are 2 ways to actually create comments. The first way is the first way I've shown you, which is using the hash symbol. Now, this is for a single line comment. If you want to just write a single line of comments. However, if you want to write multiple line of comments, you can use the triple quotes: 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and in between those quotes, you can have your comment. So, for instance, now I can say a function is simply an executable task. Now, everything inside this triple quotation mark here we consider as a comment. So this is used for multiple lines comments. All right. So let's talk about what makes up a comment. So a function rather. So you have a function name. You have the input of the function, and sometimes you have the return value of the function. Now, please note that these are the 3 things that makes up a function. However, it doesn't mean that all function needs to have all these things, right? The way you identify a function is using the parentheses in front of it. So whatever the function is called, so you have like the function name, function, followed by parentheses. This is how you identify a function. Whenever you see something like this, it could be any name at all. It is a function, right? Now the input of the function, if it requires any input to be executed, goes into the parentheses here. So you have input of the function here. Now in future episode, I'm going to explain what a return value is. But for now, let's just stick to the function name and the inputs of the function. All right. So let's play around with the print function. So right here, I'm just going to print, I am now a programmer. Whether you like it or not, whether you believe it or not, you're actually a programmer. Just by writing a single line of code, you're a programmer in the making. All right, so if I press Shift Enter, you can see that only this line was executed, right? All this was ignored because this is considered as a single line comment that starts the arch, and this is also considered as the comment, but this time around this is a multiple line comment. The print function actually accepts more than one input. So for instance, if I want to print two numbers, I can print it this way, print 9, 7, and when I execute this line of code, I get 9, 7, right? So you can pass multiple inputs to a function, but all you need to do is to ensure you separate them by comma. So I can keep passing other inputs. I can pass in a string here. I am learning to code in Python. So you can see how I splitted this string into two different parts as two separate inputs to the function. Now, the technical word used for the input for the function is actually called arguments or parameters. Now, there's a slight difference between what an argument is and what a parameter is, but for now, I'm going to stick to arguments and I'm going to explain the difference in future videos. But what you should need to know is that the input you pass to a function is sometimes referred to as arguments or parameters. Arguments or parameters. Alright guys, so that is how you install Anaconda Navigator and create your very first program. So what I want you guys to do is, at this moment, I want you to just play around with the print function, play around with Jupyter Notes and the Jupyter Lab and Anaconda Navigator, just understand these things, right? And in the next video, I'm going to go to more advanced concepts and I'm going to show you more functions also. Alright, so this series is going to be something I'm going to be posting like 3 to 2 episodes weekly because I'm going to keep them as short as possible so you can follow properly. Thank you very much for coming to my channel today, and if you've not subscribed yet, please subscribe. Very, very important. Share the video and also like the video. I'll catch you guys later. Thank you so much.